What's going down, everybody? Brother Stefani is here, Command Center Wargaming. So in today's video, we're going to be doing a tier list for the legions, much like the previous tier list for Age of Darkness, Horus Heresy 2.0, which you can check out in the link in the comments down below if you're interested in just general Horus Heresy. But we're actually going to do a tier list for the legions in Zone Mortalis in this video, okay? So for those of you who don't know, Zone Mortalis is very similar to Age of Darkness, but it's more confined areas of battle, more sort of close combat orientated gameplay, right? So a lot of what you'll find in this video is basically that a lot of the stuff I rated from last time, it might actually be pretty much almost reversed, because being a smaller engagement zone with Zone Mortalis and having different, more limited entry points and things like that, the game sort of switches a little bit. So ranged armies get a little bit less valuable, and it has a stronger close combat element. Short range weaponry, things like templates and things come into play a lot more. But we'll go through all that. So what we're going to do, so firstly, I'm doing your list. I've got your list done, your Alpha Legion armored list. I will put that up on the channel soon. I just got to record it. I've already done the list for you. Just to warn you though, it's you probably won't have many friends after it, so I don't know how brutal you want it to be, but I'll give you the full cheese list and then you can sort of water it down from there. Also as well, thank you for all the comments, everybody, on the other video, and all the likes, and please don't forget to like, subscribe and share in the videos. Just to cover some things with the Death Guard before we go moving forward, I will be covering that in another video, my logic based on the ranged weaponry of what I consider to be the strongest heavy weapons at the moment, which are culverins and las cannons, okay? And because I was talking about the Death Guard being situational, like more situational, because remember where this is in Age of Darkness, because remember we're talking about when I'm grading these, when I'm doing these tier lists, I'm not putting any bias into it, going like, oh, okay, I like this legion's color, or this is the legion I play. I'm grading these legions on how they perform and how much of their individual faction perks from their legion traits give them an advantage over time in the entire game, right? So just remember that. Just if I rate a legion a little bit lower, it doesn't mean that they're a bad legion. It doesn't mean that you cannot win with that legion. Like, all the legions share the same baseline. You'll notice in this video, the breacher units, every legion has a breacher unit. So I can't just turn around and say, well, like, oh, Imperial Fists are better only for the reason because they have a breacher unit, because every legion has breachers, every legion has terminators. So I'm comparing it to how much of their individual benefits they get, like a legion gets, okay, with their Rite of Wars along the game timeline, right? Okay, and one of the things with the Death Guard, I'm going to do a completely another video for this, talking about heavy weapons. We're going to break down everything, is that in games of Age of Darkness, okay, most of the times it makes sense to me, if you have a heavy support weapon unit, which has a massive range, which can shoot almost, across the table or halfway across the table, 70% across the table, then you want to make use of that advantage. And why would you be moving them closer, okay, to the enemy when you're going to lose that advantage, as opposed to sitting back in cover and popping off your las cannons or popping off your culverins, right? So that's why I rated Death Guard a little bit situational. In regards to the Night Lords and the Emperor's Children comments as well, yep, fair enough. I know I did gloss over them a bit, but you got to remember, these videos are their overviews, okay? So I will be doing a complete tactical breakdown of each legion, okay, in Centurion, which is a mournable thing, Age of Darkness, Horus Heresy 2.0, and Zone Mortalis, and I'm going to be doing lists, and we're going to be doing faction focuses as well, and getting started in those legions, okay? This is an overview, right? So if I do gloss over certain things, okay, then, you know, that's why. And, you know, talking about, you know, say like Emperor's Children's Primarch, say, look, they've got a really strong Primarch. Yes, they do. Fulgrim is strong. And I do admit in the last video, I think now reconsidering it, I would have actually rated Emperor's Children a little bit higher. I don't think they would have still made it up a tier, but I think definitely they would have made it closer to the, you know, the higher end, right? So, but the thing is with Fulgrim, it's like, well, yeah, he's a great Primarch. He's good against other Primarchs. But, you know, is he as good as Horus? I don't think so personally. Is he as good as Leman Russ? I would argue that he's not. He's still very strong, but you know, there are other units in the game that you know, basically run a little bit better. And in Emperor's Children, like I said, I'm judging the whole Legion. Chances are you might not even be able to use a Primarch in some games because you might be under the point threshold. So it's basically like, well, yes, I understand, you know, this army has some really cool stuff, but, you know, how many games are you going to be using a Primarch, you know? So we got to sort of balance it out. But, you know, I'll be doing these lists like once every month or 2 months or so in each element, so that when the meta changes, what I see on the battlefield, on the tabletops, I can reflect that. But that's just to clarify a few things there, and I will be going further with it in other videos. But anyway, without further ado, let's get on with it. So we're talking about Zone Mortalis, we're talking about tier list, okay? So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is in order to rate the units, we need to understand the grading benchmark, okay? The rubric, if you will. Okay, I want you to understand how I'm actually rating this stuff, all right? So I'm not just going through and just, you know, pinning the tail on the donkey here. I actually have a set condition, okay? So Zone Mortalis, you're looking at close quarter combat predominantly, right? You've got dangerous internal environments. So, you know, where Age of Darkness was like open fields, you know, forests, big sort of factory cities, all right, wide open areas and things like that. Zone Mortalis, you're looking at more theaters of war like sewers, boarding operations, insides of factories, the caverns of Calf, okay, things like that. So this is how the rules represent the gameplay, you know, because things are more brutal, because, like, you know, when you shoot a flame out in the open air, yeah, it's dangerous, right? But if you're in a confined hallway, you pop off a flamer, well, you know, the flames are going to ricochet off a wall, or plasma will bounce, or, you know, you explode a grenade and like flak is going to fly everywhere, and shrapnel will bounce off the walls. So for that reason, the rules in Zone Mortalis in Horus Heresy 2.0 are a little bit tweaked, and we're going to have a look at those changes just so you can understand why I'm rating Legions a little bit higher than I would in an Age of Darkness game. So that's the theater, all right? Small, close combat, dangerous environments. Yeah. So Zone Mortalis is also usually played between 1,000 to 2,000 point games. The mid of the range game is about 1.5k. Now, for this, why is this important? Well, the reason is because with a lower points value, you need to be fielding more infantry. You need to be basically, you know, you can't just run like 5 dreadnoughts because you're going to put yourself in the corner. I mean, you could do that, sure, especially with the new Ancient Warlord trait or Iron Hands, okay, but it's going to be a bit predictable. You're going to put yourself in a bit of a corner. Also, it's not the best idea because with Zone Mortalis, you have the hallways and the doors. The base needs to be able to fit through the door. Okay, so if you have a Contemptor, and I do rate Contemptors in Zone Mortalis, of course. All right, we could take Derrideos now as well. But if you do have one, you got to make sure you got to fit them through the doors. Like one of my units I like to use in Zone Mortalis are the Aquilon Terminators for the Custodes. Now I love those units. They're a really strong unit. They're beautiful. The problem I've had with them though, every time I run them, I can't fit them through anywhere because you're measuring it by the base. If the base can't fit through the door, then that unit can't traverse through the door. Okay, things like that. I mean, you might be able to house rule it, where when that happens, you might be able to do a dangerous terrain test, etc. But in our meta, the way we play it, we just make it like, you know, we measure things by the base, okay, as you should. And if it can't fit through that doorway, then it can't go through the doorway. That's why the Word Bearer's Contemptor Dreadnought is really cool, because he can phase through the walls and things like that. So that's why we need to take into note smaller games, point values, and things like that when we're doing our assessments of the Legion. So the next thing with Zone Mortalis, and this has changed since Heresy version 1, is that you are limited to a maximum of 15 units per, 15 models per unit in Horus Heresy version 2 of Zone Mortalis. And the reason is because it's a balance issue, but I found, like, even in the first edition of Zone Mortalis, that I would actually only do squads of max 15, not 20. And the reason was because what you'll find is, like, when you have a group of 20 units, you're usually going to have like 20 models, like, out of melee range or out of line of sight or hiding behind the wall. So that unit then becomes very redundant. You're putting all the points into one squad that's like behind an obstacle and out of line of sight or out of, you know, the combat range, the 2-inch combat range. So that's actually good, because it's going to stop a lot of players from stuffing up. I actually dropped my breacher squads down to 10 anyway. Now this unit limit, okay, the maximum of 15, sorry, model limit, that doesn't include characters. So that's a starting base of the unit. So you can also add like HQs onto that. You can also add apocryphies onto that, which I'll talk about later, which are very, very strong in Zone Mortalis, and that's completely legal. Now, the other thing we need to consider is that we aren't allowed to have any units from the anti-grav, vehicles, transports, all right, at all, and any dreadnoughts or anything that is not included on that list cannot be played if they have more than 7 wounds, right? So Contemptors are allowed, Deredeos are allowed, which is a new feature of Zone Mortalis 2.0, because before Deredeos weren't allowed because they were on a larger base. We used to measure it by base, but Leviathans are still not allowed in Zone Mortalis, right? So transports aren't allowed in Zone Mortalis either. Okay, so you could sort of start to see how this changes the theater of combat extremely substantially, all right? Because you're losing, you know, you have to rely on things more like jump packs. You have to rely on things. Infiltrate becomes way more predominant, and deep strike becomes a massive advantage, even more so, because you're losing the ability to be able, you're losing logistics to be able to get your troops around, okay? Now, there are other ways, there are other things you can do, other rules, but we just, as I said, we're just basically going through this so we can have an understanding of what we're actually grading the legions by, okay? Yeah, so the other really, really massive one is the limited entry points on the map. So when you're playing Zone Mortalis, it's not like Age of Darkness where you just have this like board edge and you just say, okay, you know, you can come on this board edge. This is your dedicated deployment zone. Or if you outflank, you know, you roll this number and you come on that direction. All right, that still happens here in Zone Mortalis. But before the game, you must predetermine entry points. Okay, so hallways or doors where your armies are going to enter the theater of combat. All right, and that can't be changed later on during the game. So you need to be very careful with that, right? Because sometimes when you lay the board out, just make sure that each player has a really, really good fair ability to get themselves on the board. And if it's not fair, make sure you tell your opponent early so that you can, you know, manipulate the terrain beforehand, okay? Because that becomes a really, really, really important strategy with Zone Mortalis. And once again, it's going to factor into the Legion rankings as well for Horus Heresy 2.0 Zone Mortalis. All right. Now, all we have for the rules so far came out from the White Dwarf. It was a couple of pages. It was 8 pages. Okay, it's not very big. There are a couple of extremely important, notable rule changes, which I'm going to cover here very quickly before we get into the tier list. And so if you want to brush up or you're not sure, you can follow that. Otherwise, you can just skip ahead. But I do recommend that you listen to what I'm saying here, because there's also some tactical unit types and things like that in here as well. But again, I am going to be going and doing a Zone Mortalis specific focus list for every single legion. So don't worry, if Night Lords aren't covered extremely in here, okay, then that's fine, because they're getting their own video in Age of Darkness and in Zone Mortalis, and I'll have a look at doing some Mournival game modes as well, Centurions and things like that. Those are all my models as well. People were telling me that they're playing Iron Hands and how fun they were to play, and that's some of my Iron Hand, that's some of my Alpha Legion there, okay? The Zone Mortalis forces, my Iron Hands started off as a Zone Mortalis force, and then I started to grow them out as an Age of Darkness force as well later on. My Alpha Legion were a massive army, and they just really, I really got them working well in Zone Mortalis. Video for another time. Let's have a look at some of the units which are strong in Zone Mortalis, so that we may better get a better gauge on what legions might be higher ranked in the tier. So I've divided this up into God tier and strong, all right? So first of all, breaches, all right? There used to be king. I've still put them here as king because, you know, they're a staple of Zone Mortalis. They were introduced, I believe, in Book 3, Extermination. Was it Book 3 or 4? Well, the book is called Extermination. Imperial Fists, they had Zone Mortalis. Basically a boarding action in there, and the Battle of Phal and things like that. So so that's how it sort of came in, and breaches were kind of designed for Zone Mortalis, but you can play them in AOD as well. Breaches are these guys. Okay, they're also my painting. It's my Alpha Legion. Those are breaches. Okay, they are. That's basically one of your standard infantry types in Zone Mortalis. Very, very, very powerful. I'll go through their rules in a bit. So, yeah, breaches, number one, very strong. So all legions can have breaches, not a problem. But there are some legions who have stronger breaches than others, which we'll be going through. Now, Terminators, okay, are also extremely strong in Zone Mortalis, like they always were, but they're even stronger now, and because they have 2 wounds. But the other reason why breaches and Terminators, or all units with the heavy infantry type, are extremely strong in Zone Mortalis is because they re-roll wounds against template and blast weapons. Okay, and in Zone Mortalis, template and blast weapons get +1 on the wound chart. Now, it used to be a reroll, which was shred. Now it's just a straight up +1. So you can see now why breaches are super, super strong in Zone Mortalis, and why Terminators are as well when you get that extra wound. So it's all heavy infantry get that rule. Okay, not just those. So there might be some here I've missed, but that's basically that. All right. So we just need to make sure that we understand that moving forward. It's going to make legions like Night Lords extremely strong as well. The close combat elements, also Imperial Fists, but we'll get into that. Now, the other thing, why I say breaches are king, and because there is another factor, you can load them out really, really well. You can give them sort of anti-tank weapons as well. I wouldn't go crazy. My old configuration used to be essentially 9 breaches, Sergeant with a Power Fist, Power Dagger when Power Daggers are cool for Alpha Legion, and I used to put 1 Melter Gun in there. I don't take Graviton. You can't take Graviton anyway. But my go-to is just having 1 Melter Gun in the squad of breaches, because for anti-armor or smashing out like a, you know, another sergeant or whatever before you get into challenging or combat, close combat. But the main reason why they used to be epic, because in Horus Heresy 1.0, we actually had a Rite of War, okay? So that Rite of War was called the Zone Mortalis Rite of War, and essentially gave your breaches a +1 invulnerable save. Now, those boarding shields, which you saw back there, okay, they actually give you an invul. All right, so as well as re-rolling wounds from blast and template weapons, which are very predominant in Zone Mortalis because everyone wants to take them because those get buffed as well, you also got a +1. So I used to have my breaches in close combat because they would be a 6+ invul range, a 5+ invul in melee, and then with the Breacher Rite of War, you could get them to a 4+ invul. With Iron Hands and things like that, you could use the Cyber Familiars, okay, and then you could actually get your Breacher Sergeants to a 3+ invul. So Breacher Sergeants with the Cyber Familiars are actually really, really, really strong. And so that's what the Breacher Squad shields do, and that's why they're so good, okay? But there is a caveat to that. We'll go through that later, okay? So, but I have to talk about troops as well. So blast and template weapons, they get +1 to wound, all right? So I've covered that, okay? Heavy infantry, covered that. And scoring units are extremely powerful in Zone Mortalis because I'd have to say 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 games I've played personally of Zone Mortalis have been objective based. Like you have to destroy the objectives, you have to guard an objective. There's a lot of doors and things like that in Zone Mortalis, opening, closing, all right, you know, mission objectives, which are objective based. So any scoring units are going to be very powerful. I mean, in any game of Horus Heresy, all right, that's why Linnaean Terminators are really good here because they have line, and that's another story. But yeah, more videos to come. So close combat units, those are going to be strong. All right, reason is because, yeah, smaller corridors. You're going to be in close combat mostly, I think, 80% of the time because there's, you know, less open areas in ZM. All right. Now, tactical despoiler squads are very, very strong in Zone Mortalis, and I will explain this in a second. There is a reason for this because they actually have a special rule now which makes them awesome. Apocryphes. So you always put in an apocryphy with a Breacher Squad if you can, in my opinion. Like I said, the format, the configuration that I told you before, you've already got invul saves, right? And unfortunately, you probably only get it to a 5+ now because I haven't been able to find that Rite of War at the moment in the rules for breaches. So let me know if the comments down below if I've missed it. But in 0.1 it was there, but in 2.0 I haven't been able to find it. But still, imagine on top of that now you also get a 5+ Feel No Pain within an apocryphy. Right? Apocryphies can also take jump packs as well. All right? So that becomes, you know, breaches become very, very hard to shift at that point. All right? So yeah, very, very strong unit apocryphies in ZM. Fast units, so jump packs as well. Now, I've put a question mark with the jump packs, and the reason is because there is a caveat with them, all right? And I'll explain that in a second. So, fast units, but anything which can get to objectives, because you are limited to entry points, having the ability to zip around and get to the combat or reach an objective before someone else, or, you know, or deep strike, or whatever it is that you want to be doing, is always a massive advantage in Zone Mortalis. And also Contemptor Dreadnoughts. Now, Contemptor Dreadnoughts, very strong in Zone Mortalis. Okay, they're because of their wound system now, and also they're a very, very good way, unless you have Relentless like Death Guard, a really good way to get your units into heavy weapons to bear, into long range combat. So yeah. Fantastic. So scoring units. Now, scoring units, things like tactical squads, despoilers, they actually have a special rule now called Heart of the Legion. And that rule, basically, as long as they are 6 inches within the circumference or the diameter of the objective, they actually gain a Feel No Pain buff as well, which is massive. So essentially they're getting an apocryphy for free as long as they're on objectives. So this is a really cool mechanic because it allows us to put tactical marines on objectives and things like that, where our more specialist units are going out to stuff things up and wreck face, right? Cool. So talking about jump packs in Zone Mortalis. So good movement, capturing objectives coming from the table from a limited entry point, which I explained. Now, here's the thing. The only thing is with jump packs is that in Zone Mortalis Horus Heresy 1.0, if there was a ceiling on your terrain, like in your internal area, your jump packs actually could not deep strike. Now, I have not been able to find that rule yet in the rules, okay, in 2.0, but it may still be there, or they might bring it in, okay, but for now, what I'm reading is they could still deep strike. It's just that they can't deep strike assault, which is, you know, doing it all at once, okay? I need to have a look at that. Let me know in the comments down below. I need to have a research of that rule a little bit more, but it's just something to keep your eye on, okay? Now, the bad thing about the jump packs is, and this is why they're rated in strong and not god tier, is basically because when you're zipping around, whenever you activate your jump pack and use your full range of movement, you are actually going to get penalties. You're actually going to have to make dangerous terrain tests and things like that. Okay, so each time you move, you can risk killing one of your guys if they roll a 1, okay, or whatever it is. So now, here's the thing. You would be surprised, actually, how many times that comes up and is a thing. So it's something to consider. But at the same time, I have seen these guys being able to reinforce areas very quickly, especially when you have destroyer units with jump packs on, with rad grenades and things like that. Okay, and we'll talk about that later. Emperor's Children. Okay, with charnable sabers and jump packs and as destroyers, dark angels as well. I've actually been ripped up a few times by these in Zone Mortalis. We'll get into Emperor's Children a bit more later in the video because, as I said, changes the game here when you have a completely massive focus on close combat. Going first is a huge deal. Okay, because it's a lot more unlikely that you're going to be picked off from afar in Age of Darkness. So hopefully you could start to see it starting to make sense here, how I've started graded stuff, okay? So additional notes I've discussed already, the Zone Mortalis Rite of War, okay? I haven't seen it yet. I've asked some of my associates and friends and people that I play with who are very, very knowledgeable about the Horus Heresy. They haven't seen it either, but look, it might be there. Let me know in the comments down below. Hopefully that gets FAQ'd or they update it. I'm hoping Games Workshop is going to do a box set, actually, a Horus Heresy box set in the future. I'm actually hoping for that, and where we can get some terrain, and they might give us like a proper rule book for Zone Mortalis, because it's great that we got the rules in the White Dwarf, but it was kind of like, you know, just chuck it into the White Dwarf. And I'd actually like to see a proper rule book as it was in the original first release of Horus Heresy. So ceilings I've discussed. So essentially you can't deep strike assault, right, if there's ceilings, but you need to determine that at the start of the game. Jump pack units, again, I've discussed that already as well, okay? So this is a really cool unit. It's a Rapier Laser Destroyer. It's really cool, but it's a very situational unit in Zone Mortalis, because a lot of the times you won't get the line of sight, stuff like that off it as well, okay? So the big difference here, just for people who are new to this, all right, so Age of Darkness is usually the big table. It's what you might usually consider Warhammer back in like 8th edition or so. You know, heaps of units, heaps of armor. Okay, this is also abbreviated to AOD, Age of Darkness. So when someone talks about that, sorry about the veterans, this is just for the newer players, right? So we all know what we're doing, right? But there's some people who might want to know this, that might help them. So AOD, so if you hear someone say, okay, let's have a game of AOD, you know, they're talking about Age of Darkness, which is the Horus Heresy 2.0 rules, the general rules of the rule book that's out now. Get the game mode that's out now. Yes, that is my table. Those are my units here. It's Matt Lee's Blood Angels. Matt Lee's Blood Angels, yeah, which is really cool as well. My Alpha Legion Knight. Zone Mortalis small, that's not mine, it was a Forge World picture. So Zone Mortalis, smaller games, lower point levels, and as you can see, like, you might use armor for terrain, all right, but that's about it, okay, and also abbreviated to ZM. All right, fantastic. So with that said, everybody, let's have a look and let's go in here. And now that we know what the criteria is, let's go ahead and rate this legion, or the legions up. Okay, fantastic. So let's go. So the usual things, I've just got godly, strong, balanced, situational, heresy. Yes, the colors are inverted this time, but you know, that's what it is. So godly is OP, strong is very good, strong, good army, you have an advantage. Balanced is still very good army, but you don't really have an advantage over other legions. Situational is that the army is a solid army, but they only are going to shine in certain situations as opposed to throughout the game duration, okay? And heresy is just basically crap. I took out the Games Workshop 9th edition 40k rules writing thing as being the crappiest one because, I don't know, I think we'll move on from that. I just won't talk about 40k until they fix it. So I will start playing 40k again one day when maybe, I think I'll just maybe edition 10, but at the moment, nah. Okay, so let's get started. All right, now, all right, let's start with the elephant in the room, Imperial Fists. All right, now, Imperial Fists here, they get all the same benefits as they did in our last video in Age of Darkness, right? The +1 here in shooting, okay? The awesome characters, all right? The lot. Sigismund, okay? The epic rite of war, the deep striking, they've got a lot of it, okay? But they also have... So on top of all the shooting buff set, they have really strong melee units like the Knights Templar and Sigismund, and they have the Phalanx Wardens as well. So they are absolutely brutal. So they are going back into godly. All right. Sorry about that, everybody. But that's just the way it is. Now, it was said that a lot of people debated me on Rogal Dawn about being a bit of a meh Primarch. A lot of people telling me he's good. Look, I'll be honest, I haven't used him much at all in Horus Heresy 2.0. So, look, he might be good. All I know is that in Horus Heresy version 1, I just thought he lacked a bit. But look, it doesn't really matter at this point because they don't even need a Primarch at this point. It's just OP now, right? So they are super, super strong. With all their boarding shields and things like that, and range shooting and their close combat units, it's like, you know, Phalanx Wardens, if you do a list up properly, you deploy them properly, super, super strong. Okay, so, yep, that's good. Okay, now the next one we will talk about the Ultramarines. Okay, the Ultramarines, now, in the last video for AOD, we had them up in balanced, we had them about just below mid-tier balanced. Now, here's the thing. They are a shooting army, fair enough. But however, they do have a really, really good special unit, okay, which are a series of breaches, right? Those guys with the shields. And they also have power swords. So it's like AP3. So the whole squad can be kitted up with power swords, which makes them really, really, really decent for a line unit. Okay, yeah, sure, they're still hitting on 4s most of the time, you know, but your AP3, and you could chuck a chaplain in there and things like that. See, Imperial Fists, they don't really have that in their base breaches. Like, you have the Phalanx Wardens if you run, like, a specific Rite of War. I believe you could take them as troops. But Ultramarines, yeah, you could kind of just use them up on the base. So, I'm actually going to move them up to strong for Zone Mortalis. And if you mix that with their bonuses to dedicated fire, they could be quite strong. Because if you play the game, you know, if you put some thought into the tactics, you could go through and get some really, really, really good results from using mixes of ranged units and using close combat units as well. Their weapons are going to be a lot useful as well for dreadnoughts and things like that too. Okay, same with Imperial Fists. I don't think I could quite move them up to godly, but I think strong. They're definitely, yeah, good in Zone Mortalis for sure. All right, so who are we going to do next? Let's do the Alpha Legion, okay? My boys, my beautiful Legion. Now, again, they're going to have everything else that every other unit's going to get, all right? But the problem is that when you are going to take another if you're going to use Calls of the Hydra and you're going to run 3 units for another legion, like let's say I'm gonna just run like 3 units of Invictus Azarans. Oh, that's another reason why Ultramarines are super strong in Zone Mortalis. Oh, godly. I can't believe it, everybody. I forgot about the Invictus Azarans. They also have a jump pack squad as well in all this, full of Martyrus Terminators. So they've got a few things coming in and on there. So I'm gonna look. Usually they'd be about here, okay, but I think they're gonna deserve a godly in Zone Mortalis. Yeah, I might bring them down later. We'll see what happens. But anyway, Alpha Legion. The issue is in order to steal more than 1 unit, you're going to need to be able to use their Rite of War, which is Calls of the Hydra, which means that your heavy support, a lot of your other units are going to be coming on in reserves. So that makes them a lot weaker. Before I had them up in Godly, they've also lost their Power Daggers, which is, 1 less additional. Well, they've got Power Daggers, but the rules are different now. So they've lost that additional attack. So I'm actually going to move them down to Strong. All right, they would be between balanced and strong in Zone Mortalis, but I will lean towards strong because they could take the other stuff that everybody else is using. Their ability to infiltrate, though, makes them a lot stronger also in Zone Mortalis as well. So I guess I could put them up here, but I might leave them there for now. Okay, fantastic. All right, now let's have a look. Who's our next Legion? Let's look at the Iron Hands. Iron Hands for Zone Mortalis going up to Godly. They have, as I explained before at the start of the video, okay, you've got a lot of benefits with their Rite of War. Okay, they're -1 to hit. It applies to Dreadnoughts as well. You've got the fact that they get buffs to their Dreadnoughts. So it's just pretty crazy with Iron Hands. You can also put your Cyber Familiars on. You got some good characters there if you want to use the PDFs. So a lot of their disadvantages and their predictability isn't a problem here that I discussed in the other video. And that's because, well, it's Zone Mortalis. You know it's going to go into close combat. You know what that enemy is going to do, right? So they are definitely going up there into Godly. Actually, you know what? I think Ultramarines, I'm going to have to move down a peg. All right, unfortunately, yeah. Because when I look at these 2 units, it's like, okay, well, they're cool and they're strong, but I just don't think they're bringing as much to the table in Zone Mortalis as these 2 legions here. Now, also, Custodes. We don't currently have rules for the Custodes yet in 2.0, but I will tell you, if it's anything like the first version of Horus Heresy, Custodes go in Godly for Zone Mortalis. They're like one of the stronger legions in Zone Mortalis for sure because of their shields, -1 to hit and things like that as well. So yeah, fantastic. Okay, let's talk about the Salamanders. So Salamanders in the last video, they were situational, and my justification for that was because their template and flame weapons didn't really synergize with the warlord trait, with the faction trait too well. It was also very situational because you could, you were always going to be in close combat and things. But here's the thing. That's now a thing now here in Zone Mortalis, and especially with the +1 to wound on template weapons, you want to take these guys all day, every day. So they're going up there into Godly. All right, for Zone Mortalis. Okay, so Salamanders are moving into Godly for Zone Mortalis. Now, the next one, we're going to look at the White Scars. Now, unfortunately, look, their biggest strengths are going to come from movement and things like that, which is strong. But now you can actually take bikes in Zone Mortalis, so that's good. But the problem is, unless there's a big open area, you're going to have issues with bikes and the things in the corridors. So I'm afraid, judging by all their traits and rules, I'm going to put these guys up into the balanced. Yeah, they're definitely not bad. And they're better than situational, but I think, yeah, a lot of these guys' advantages come from kiting and being able to have room to move, and they can do close combat. They do have really good close combat units, Okay, but like the Ebon Kashyyyk and that, but they just, you know, if you want to compare these guys to Iron Hands or the Breaches in with Ultramarines, nah. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to put these guys up the top here in balanced. All right. Okay, next Legion. We're gonna go to the Word Bearers. World Eaters. Automatically, I'm going to put these guys up here in strong because it's a close combat game. You've got a close combat army. They also have some massive advantages to Feel No Pain, which is huge for Zone Mortalis, as discussed in my last video for AOD. And a lot of their deployment issues, a lot of their ranged issues, a lot of their logistical issues aren't really going to be so much of an issue here with World Eaters. I might actually put those guys up into Godly, but we'll leave them there for now. If I get too many Godlies, I'll have to sort them out. But yeah, but they're definitely going up there into Godly. Really, really good. Word Bearers now. So Word Bearers super strong in Zone Mortalis. They have a lot of tricks up their sleeve, like I discussed before in the other video. They can, cast a lot of powers, block people off. They have that demonic contemptor, which can go through walls and things like that. So I am going to rate them. They're chaplains and everything, and being immune to fear is huge because they know. So I'm going to put these guys up into strong. I will actually put them. They have Gal Vorbak. What am I talking about? They don't have a dedicated breacher unit. Of course they do. They have Gal Vorbak. So I think they're gonna have to go up just one before Ultramarines. I think that's pretty good. And that's fine. Look, Space Wolves, exactly like they're a mirror of the World Eaters pretty much. These guys are super strong in Zone Mortalis because with their essentially their faction trait and their units, they're all geared up for close combat, so they come in here. This will probably be, I think, probably Iron Hands come down at the bottom. That's looking about right. Okay, and you can see here that sort of Imperial Fists, they're still first because they could do both elements of warfare extremely well. Right, all of these, it's like, okay, these guys have got one, cool thing, which is the template weapons. These guys have got, the close combat. These guys have got, so these legions are excelling at one thing, but Imperial Fist, they're just excelling at everything. So look, if you want a power game, just play Imperial Fist. So anyway, fantastic. Moving on. Now, Emperor's Children, in my last video, I think I reassessed it a bit, and I took some of your feedback on board. And I had them in balanced, but I think I lower end of balance. But I actually think that they could have gone up a bit further. In AOD, I still don't think I'd rate them past balance, but I would definitely rate them on the top end of balanced. But here's the thing. So they are actually very strong in Zone Mortalis. And the reason is because of their they're going first rule in close combat. It's a close combat game. So Emperor's Children are going to be actually, I think here, okay, going first in most of the time in close combat is pretty huge, right? So I'm going to put them here. I don't quite think they get up here to God tier, and I might actually consider bringing some of these down, but we'll see how we go. But definitely the top end of strong, okay? Alright, so the next one, Sons of Horus. They are pretty strong, actually. So we're going to chuck them out there, okay? On the back end of strong, though. Alright, because once again, they've got, good buffs to melee again as well. They've Terminators are pretty good. So they're going to go up the back end of strong. Night Lords. Okay, so Night Lords, alright, Terror Squads, Contemptor, jump packs, just a lot of the fear mechanic interjecting with their units, and the only reason I rated them down a little bit last time was basically because they didn't really have any specific buffs to range, right? But here, that's not really a massive thing in Zone Mortalis. So they're actually extremely strong. So I'm going to put them here, actually. So in a godly on the second tier, because they're essentially like, they've got all their breaches, but all their other fear mechanics and special units and things, they're just very mobile, very strong for close combat. So they're gonna rip ass, okay, in Zone Mortalis for sure. Now Blood Angels, definitely strong. Yeah, they're definitely strong. Because flame weapons, you've got the melters, you've got deep strike, and you've got jump packs, things like that. Terminators, good Terminators. So strong. I don't think godly. Let me think about it for a second. I'm not really finding any weaknesses to them though, because again, they're special units. You've got the Paladins, -1 to hit. Melter weapons, which are close range. You've got a Moritat who won't get hot. So I think I'm going to have to put them in godly as well. A lot of godly this time, isn't there? Yep. So Dark Angels, once again, versatile, flexible. They don't really have anything that's going to buff their breaches or anything that I know of, but they have good close combat abilities. One of the best Terminators in the game, arguably. I think I'm going to put them probably around about here for Zone Mortalis. Okay, under about there, actually. Yeah, for strong. Iron Hands. Iron Warriors. Once again, yeah, look, they're more of a ranged shooting army. So unfortunately, they're going to lose a little bit here because there's not much range in the theater. So I'm going to have them put in here under balanced. Okay. The Death Guard will leave for last because that was a controversial one. The Raven Guard. Okay, so I've got to test the Raven Guard out. I've got big plans for the Raven Guard, especially with the Dark Furies. They can really wreck some face there. Also with the Daemorthian or the Darmorthian, however you pronounce it. Also Infiltrate as well. They're going to be pretty strong. I don't know if they're godly yet. I can't say they're godly yet. But I do think, because of Infiltrate, because of their close combat specialist units, I do think that they're going to come up over here into the higher end of strong. Maybe even godly, but I'll leave them here for now under strong. All right, cool. Thousand Suns, characters, psychic powers, yeah, all great and everything. Good units, good Terminators, Psychers are good. So being able to deny reactions, deep strikes, bottom end of strong. Bottom end of strong is good. And then finally the Death Guard. So the Death Guard. Now, although, unlike the other Legion, or the other game mode, which is AOD, was talking about the heavy weapons, Poison, this is actually where that Warlord, the faction trait, is going to come into play into a huge way. And that is the fact that moving with heavy weapons, poison weapons, this is where you're going to be wanting to move heavy weapons. Right? So this makes Death Guard super duper strong in Zone Mortalis. And they're going to come up here, I think, just behind Night Lords. Right? So that makes a lot of sense. I think actually World Eaters are going to come up to here. Yeah. I'm still debating about Blood Angels. They could take breaches. They don't really have like a core unit though that's dedicated to combat. See, World Eaters do. Salamanders don't, but they've got the Pyroclast. And again, when you've got a whole game with a mechanic +1 to wound on already a buffed template, that's a huge thing. So I think they're going to stay where they are. Death Guard stay. Yep, that's all fine. I'm happy with that. So I'm just... let me think about Iron Hands first. I think they might have to come down to... No, they stay where they are. Space Wolves, I think, is outflanking and that Yeah, no, they can stay where they are. I think this is about right, everybody. Emperor's Children here under strong. Raven Guard under strong. I would even probably put Raven Guard here, but I want to test it out more first. They've done me good so far, but I want to test it out first. Yeah. Yep, that looks about right to me, everybody. So there you go. There's my tier list for Zone Mortalis. All right, and once again, this is an overview. I will be going into every single one of these legions rules, and I'm going to be doing lists, and we're going to be doing whole videos based on their factions and doing deep dives into it. So if you like the video, please subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Share the video, everybody, and I'll catch you in the next one. You have some great games of 30k, and I'll see you soon.